Hello everybody. Due to many requests from our viewers, we've decided to dedicate this show to the subject of natural disasters, destructive acts of nature. Here with us again is Rav Laitman. We want to speak today about disasters, so maybe we should begin with this first most important question. Are disasters, natural calamities, that we see happening around the world and to people, are they preventable or are they not? Well, it's not new. It's possible to say that through the entire history of humanity we've experienced major and minor disasters. Is it preventable or not? Yes, can we say that on one hand it simply comes to show the insignificance of man as opposed to nature, to show how small man is compared to the universe? And on the other hand, we could say that man is controlling this, or that it comes from above. Yes, all sorts of philosophies are derived from it, whether to accept it naturally or perhaps to resist it. Maybe if we prevent something here, it will pop up somewhere else and be even worse, so we shouldn't, and so on. And there are many approaches to it. I would say this. I usually love explaining how Kabbalah relates to the subject. And everyone will, as a result of it, be able to explain to himself, in everything that happens, how to rightly interpret the situation. The wisdom of Kabbalah tells us that we're living in a reality which is invariable. This reality is called Creator, or the upper law, nature. And this upper light, the Creator, the general law, is at complete rest. Just as there are many verses about this, I do not change my name and so on, it means that we're in something permanent, in some ocean of upper light, which has an unchanging nature. And what happens is that we change. And the overall plan involving us and the light that we're in is such that every time, every moment, we have to adapt ourselves to the light. Desires are revealed in me, and my desires are of a nature that is opposite to the light. They're egoistic, in order to receive, right? While the nature of the light is in order to bestow. As it is said about the Creator, the good and benevolent. So I have to correct my desires accordingly, so that I would be like that in order to bestow as well. I have to go through a correction of myself. And if I don't perform this correction, to the extent that I'm opposite to the light, I suffer in all sorts of ways. Actually, the entire humanity, and our entire world, inanimate, vegetative, living, and speaking, sense that. They sense the difference from the light that we're in, which actually streams and fills the entire reality. And because the desire to receive in us constantly grows and intensifies more and more, in every generation it accumulates and it rises in us, and we don't succeed. We don't even think about the fact that we have to correct it. And so we find ourselves in a chain of generations suffering more and more. This is happening to such an extent that the Zohar indicates that at the end of the 20th century, humanity will reach such a state which it will simply be intolerable. People will begin to use drugs to commit suicide. Despair will take hold as the predominant problem or illness out of all of human illnesses and problems. Terrorism will emerge, and all kinds of eruptions, because man will feel his existence in a world of suffering. And the reason for this is only one: the lack of equality of form with the upper light that we're in. And it turns out that the correction to this, what the Kabbalah recommends that we do, is quite simple. But there's a psychological problem with it. You have to agree with it, to grasp it, to take it and change ourselves. And then we can really feel eternity, wholeness, benevolence. So actually, according to the Kabbalah, you are saying that it can be avoided. It's preventable only through the inner correction of a person. There's no other way. No external actions will help us. What do you mean by external actions? Well, suppose we start to place all sorts of sensors to detect earthquakes. To put it simply, any technical means that we develop except inner correction will eventually be to our disadvantage. We will see that the more drugs we produce, the more ill we become. The more we advance in any area, in any field of development, we eventually arrive at the recognition of something bad. So the wisdom of Kabbalah agrees with the approach that there really is predetermination and all these disasters are predetermined. Because there are prophecies in the Quran, in the New Testament, in the Bible, and prophets, they actually talk about this time as a period of disasters. So is Kabbalah the same kind of framework? Well, let me explain this. Up until the beginning of the 20th century, until the point where the nation of Israel began to return to the land of Israel, all of humanity needed to go through these years and to suffer and accumulate a bitter experience. And out of that eventually comes evolution, so that humanity will discern that external development doesn't bring it to any place good. And eventually, today, we've reached a general crisis in technology, in education, in family life, social problems, international problems of all sorts. And it really is a general crisis, where in all areas of humanity we see that we don't know how to progress. We don't know what direction to take, because whatever direction we take, we see that after a few years, we actually come to a bitter result. And until now, any development that took place was only in order for us to arrive at such a situation and conclusion. And to have this question awaken in us, what should we do? What is the meaning of our life? Why do we live this way? And is there a plan for evolution that doesn't bring us to failure and bitter sensation? So is there something that we gain from these disasters and suffering? This is exactly when the Zohar claims that the wisdom of Kabbalah will be revealed, because there will be a need for it. That's why now, in our time, we see people everywhere are talking about Kabbalah, although they still don't understand why or what the truth is about it. It's already coming from above as the next step of development. Is it correct to see a gain in each and every disaster? Can we learn something from this to see the upper power is hinting at us somehow? It used to be this way until the beginning of the 20th century. And by the fact that there was a return to the land of Israel and the nation of Israel received its place, now the nation must perform its role, meaning that it must realize itself, implement itself, as the wisdom of Kabbalah claims, for the general correction of the nation and later on to become a light to the world, and also bring it to the nations of the world. And by that, surely all the disasters will end, just as the prophets wrote. Not just evil things, but also good things. And we'll see that we'll reach them as well. So I'd like to understand one point. I can take a certain disaster and now I try to understand, let's say, an earthquake has killed tens of thousands of people. It doesn't matter what it is. They say that if there is trouble anywhere in the world, at any level, human, natural, no matter what it is, it's the fault of the people of Israel. But why does it happen that way, that there is some kind of a disaster, and I'm supposed to learn from the disaster that an inner correction is necessary, because all of man has to reach that. But the people of Israel are the ones that have to begin the correction. They're responsible for nature's existence, according to the inner similarity to the light or opposition to it. And this causes all sorts of disasters, even explosions on some star. Or a forest could catch on fire somewhere. Even without any seeming connection to man, these events at any level, inanimate, vegetative, animate, they don't seem relevant to us, but they depend on our lack of correction, and that depends only on us. Does location have a meaning? You spoke about explosions on stars. Does it mean anything if a disaster takes place in Europe or in Asia or America? Yes, it does, because we're included in each other within the system of the first man, where all the souls are interconnected as one soul towards the upper light. And there's an important part that has to be corrected first. Like the souls of the people of Israel, and there's a part that waits for a later time to be corrected, which are the souls of the nations of the world. So the accounting is quite complicated, because the inclusion of the souls creates a situation, as is written, the righteous suffers and the wicked benefits, where we don't exactly see where the blow is aimed. Indeed, we see that fundamentally in nature, the nations of the world sense that it's up to Israel. And Israel today is gaining a very bad reputation in the world, even though we seemingly don't cause any harm and just want to live peacefully and be good to everyone. We see that doesn't help. So the Jewish nation should get all the suffering. Why should the world have to suffer? First, the Jewish people should begin correction. True, but because we're all intermingled, all the souls are connected. As it's written, Israel went into exile only in order for them to join to the souls of the Gentiles. So from this it turns out that we are very impressed by what the nations of the world are saying, because we're in exile and dissent, in a state that is like them, and we want to be with them, like them. So because we're highly impressed by what they tell us, then through them this hatred reaches us, meaning that the forces bring us back to do a little more understanding, that there's some higher reason that we must correct ourselves. In order to stop this hatred, this anti-Semitism, to have a chance to escape it, something has to be done. So do you actually see these disasters as punishments for the fact that the nation of Israel hasn't corrected itself? No, not punishments. As I drew the general picture, you can see it's not a punishment, but it's a system that functions according to the plan of equality of form between forces, between our inner forces and the force of the light, the upper light. To the extent that there's a balance, everyone feels eternity and wholeness. To the extent that there is no balance, the souls suffer. And Israel is the first because it's the reason for the situation. And this system or program was written in advance, and nothing changes in it, except for our desire, our free choice, which can really save the situation here and achieve correction.